Love it. You see this carbon fiber top and it is beautiful. It is so versatile. It is a perfect replica of it in miniature form. Hello children and desire, your friendly neighborhood rave, and today we are going to be talking about Enya's X4 and X4 mini guitar. Now these are carbon fiber acoustic guitars, both of which I have toured and played plenty of shows with, and I've spent a fair amount of time with both. And so I'd like to break down both their pluses and minuses, if you will. So the first guitar we got is the X4. Now right off the bat, you see this carbon fiber top and it is beautiful. You know it, you love it, you saw the review, posted it up there. Check it out when you get a moment. That'll walk you through all the specs, the details, and all that good stuff. Now, I have played a few shows with this, and I've got to say, I have loved it. It has been fantastic. It has been the workhorse that I've always been looking for out of an acoustic guitar. Now, one of the cool things about this guitar is because it's carbon fiber, again, after a show, you leave it in your car, you like forget it, go off and have fun, hang out, do what you gotta do, come back and it'll be just as fine. As a matter of fact, let's see how in tune it is. I haven't touched it, it's been like 4 months now. Love it. It's in tune, it stays in tune no matter what weather condition you put it through. I freaking love that. A really cool thing happened with this guitar. I was playing a show and there was other acoustic guitar players there that night. There was a musician in the audience who was a friend of mine, whose opinion I really admire and respect. When I played mine, after my set, I asked him, hey, what do you think of the sound of this carbon fiber guitar in comparison to this guy who was playing a mid-tier wood acoustic guitar that a lot of people would think is really great? And the reason why I asked his opinion on the sound of this guitar is because I could be in heaven performing with this guitar and it'll sound great to me. It sounds fantastic, but at the end of the day, what matters is the audience and if they're enjoying what they're hearing. So I asked him, how did it sound? He goes, oh, yours sounded way clearer. Yours cut through way more. This guitar sounds boxy. And I do think it has something to do, obviously, with the carbon fiber construction, but also just the electronics and the thought and the amount of intention put into how the electronics of the Enya X4 is supposed to work. Between the effects and the tone shaping, it is so versatile and so malleable. A few things that I love about the guitar is the feel. I love the width of the neck. Again, big hands, great sound. I love how loud it could get on its own. When you play this guitar with another acoustic guitar, it has its own voice and it sits in its own kind of lane where it's super identifiable. It sounds like a really beautiful acoustic. So in addition to sounding fantastic live, going through DIs and PAs, the tone knob on this guitar is fantastic, because if there's a poor mixing console or poor PA speakers, the tone knob will go a long way to making sure the guitar cuts through without sounding too brittle, and it gets the job done for whatever kind of gig you need it to handle. Whether you need it in the front as the main star or in the background as accompaniment to, for example, a singer. It got the job done for me perfectly. And I find that in order to mitigate any kind of onstage feedback, it really is a matter of just riding the tone knob with the volume knob at the right setting. And that's what a good sound check is for, even a line check. So those are the pros of the X4. Now on to the specific pros of the X4 Mini. The first one being that it's mini. It's travel size, it's portable, it is way more airplane friendly than the regular X4. Now, I also don't know if this matters to anybody, but this one doesn't have a cutout, whereas that one does. Maybe that's a plus for you if you want upper fret access for your acoustic guitars, or the Mini is a plus for you because you want a more fuller, rounder sound. The neck on the Mini feels exactly the same as the X4, except for the fact that it's just a little bit thinner on the back here and a little bit narrower on the sides. Another thing about the Mini is that it comes with an onboard tuner, and that's got its pluses and minuses, and we're going to get into that later. And all the pluses about the X4 apply to the X4 Mini. It is a perfect replica of it in miniature form. It sounds great, it feels great, it's got smooth features, and it feels nice to hold. The effects on both sound great, and they're very similar in function. So let's discuss the good things about both these guitars. For starters, when you leave it in a cold car and you take it out of its case, that's an incredible feeling. There's something really nice about that feeling, if I could be honest. You won't really do that with a regular acoustic guitar because that's kind of bad news. You don't want your guitar to be too hot or too cold, because that usually means there's a crack coming soon, unfortunately. You don't want to put your acoustic guitars through any kind of weather change or traumatic changes in humidity even. But you don't have to worry about that when it comes to carbon fiber acoustic guitars at all. So that's one thing about them that is pretty incredible. The other thing about them is they both have really sturdy cases. You can watch my review video on the X4 Mini Mini as well as the X4, and you'll see that they are both really roadworthy cases. And they both have the same kind of compartments for accessories. And the last cool thing that both these guitars share is that they're a head turner. They're a conversational starter. From guitar players and enthusiasts to audience members who can just appreciate a pretty looking instrument, everybody's heads turned. They all asked me what my opinion was, what my experience was with a carbon fiber acoustic guitar. How did I like the effects? What was the general sound? And they asked this because they want to compare it to a regular acoustic guitar. This is its own kind of an acoustic guitar. These carbon fiber guitars sound great right now, and the way they sound right now is how they're going to sound forever. So it's a bit of a trade-off, but in terms of the stability and the ease of mind of not having to deal with any kind of weather stuff or humidity and not having to worry about it cracking or getting any kind of damage outside from me falling on it or dropping it or anything like that, it might be worth exploring for some people. It's definitely, both of these rather, are definitely my go-to acoustic guitars for live performances and touring, period, bar none. I've used the XG as the main guitar for certain songs that require specific tuning because it has a really nice ethereal sound with certain effects. Even if these two didn't have effects, which obviously they both have onboard effects, but if they didn't, as acoustic guitars, they'd be my go-to for the road and performances, period. They just sound that good. They both cut through a PA incredibly well. Now, as I mentioned, I was recently on an acoustic tour of the Midwest, and this was my guitar. This is the weapon that I played all those shows with, every song, every show, right here on this bad boy. It did not disappoint. It sounded fantastic. It was great. This is how I can demonstrate how fantastic this guitar is. I have a specific story with the Enya X4 Mini. I was playing this outside gig. Me being the forgetful Joe I was, I forgot my guitar cable. And so I had somebody go back to where I was staying to get the guitar cable, but showtime was in less than 30 minutes. And so I had to start playing. So I asked the sound engineer at the show, hey, can you give me like a regular like direct mic? He goes, yeah, sure. So the setup was vocal mic and mic to record the guitar. I had the guitar set up just like this, turned it on, and I just maxed out the volume to make it loud, and I put in a little bit of reverb so it could be just a little bit more resonant, and I would just play. I'd play whatever I was playing, and you gotta remember, I'm outside, so it doesn't sound, the reverb doesn't sound as contained. You hear overtones, which sound like more of an acoustic rich sound, especially when it's picked up by a mic. It just sounded like a louder acoustic guitar for the first 2-3 songs that I played without a cable. That in and of itself, that alone saved my ass. The fact that I could just have a mic right there, play this guitar with reverb, saved my butt. Then of course I got my cable plugged in, readjusted my settings, and everything was easy peasy lemon squeezy, and everything sounded great. I could have played that whole show with nothing but that setting, the mic, and it would have been fine. But it sounded a lot better, obviously, when you plugged it in, because this guitar, the X Mini and the X4 original, both are killers when it comes to plugging into a PA or a DI. And when it comes to the weight of these two guitars, there's really not that much of a difference. I mean, yeah, this one's a little heavier, but not by much. They're both fairly light guitars. They're great. Now let's talk about the cons. So for both these guitars, one thing I didn't really appreciate was the really small side dots. Now you can't really see the side dots on the X4, but they're tiny dots, and for the shows that I played with this, there was good lighting, so I didn't really have to tape up as I did here, because if I'm on tour and I don't know what kind of lighting setup these venues have, I don't want to be taken by surprise. I don't want to be left out in the dark, literally on stage. So I taped up where the position fret markers are so I could see where's the 3rd fret, 5th, etc. That helped a lot. And the other thing that both these guitars kind of have in common that I would say is like a con is the lack of control with regards to the effects. So for example, the reverbs are both fairly common and obvious in terms of how they work, right? There's a room and a hall. So the more you turn right, the more wetness you get of each reverb, depending on which setting you're in. But when it comes to the chorus and the delay for both guitars, it's a bit different. Particularly with the delay, it gets a little frustrating because there's no wetness or decay control. The delay controls the timing of the delay. So you can't control the feedback length, but it's just the time of the delay that you can control. I would have liked for there to have been a control for the wetness. I would have liked for there to be a control for the feedback of the delay, how long it lasts, how much you could hear of the delay. At the moment, both of them just have a time control in terms of controlling the time of the delay. Not a deal breaker, but it kind of limits the amount of times and the amount amount of ways I can use the delay on this acoustic guitar. So if you turn the delay on, you better make sure you want it. Now let's get into each guitar's specific cons. So starting with the X4 Pro, we have like a Florentine kind of cut here, right? This cutaway is great for accessing the upper fret. However, when I got this guitar, it had a strap button right there. Now, I don't know about you, but if I'm playing an acoustic guitar and I want to solo up here and there's a strap button right there, not really comfortable. Very counterintuitive in terms of reaching up there. So I had to screw that out, take that strap button out, and that kind of sucks because there's less of a stability when it comes to like putting a strap on this guitar and holding it. So I had to kind of do the old shoelace method right here in terms of wrapping a shoelace around the headstock. It gets the job done, but that's just something I thought that was a little bit weird. The other con of this guitar was something I mentioned in the review video where I said that the indicators to let you know where you are in terms of the settings of the effects is too small. It's practically invisible. Forget about even trying to see it on stage, which is why I kind of had to cut out these little like indicators of my own using these white stickers. Another thing about this guitar, as I mentioned before, is that it did have to get set up. When it was shipped to me, even though it was a carbon fiber guitar and it was perfectly like okay, I did have to lower this guitar fairly significantly in order to play it comfortably. The action was a little too high. Moving on to the X4 Mini, the X4 Mini solved a few of the problems that I mentioned before with the X4. Now remember the issue I mentioned with the X4 original with the indicators being practically invisible? Not really the case with the X4 Mini. There's a bigger indentation where you can see where your controls are. So you can see if your volume is at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and the controls are fairly good. That's an improvement. The downside though is the fact that there is no tone knob. So a huge plus of the X4 is that I can control the tone knob and how I cut through the PA and whatnot. Now again, I was in the hands of pretty good mix engineers during my tour, thankfully. However, for almost every show, I had to ask them for a little bump at around 1,000, as well as a little bump at around 4,000. Because this guitar running through PAs, although sounds great, sometimes I find I'd want it to be a little bit more on the higher end of the EQ spectrum, just like a little bit of boost there, just so it could cut through if there's any chatter, for example, or just so it could complement my vocals a little better. So that's one thing that I find is missing in the X4 Mini is the tone knob. And like I mentioned, there is a tuner here. However, it is very finicky. I'm just gonna say it. It's not the best tuner in the world. The Next G2, and you finally got it right. Fantastic onboard tuner. Very intuitive to use. Love it. I can't wait for them to put it on their next guitars. If they're ever gonna do another iteration of the X4 or the X4 Mini, I hope something like that tuner is gonna be on those iterations because that tuner is perfect. So even though this tuner is good and is fine for casual use, it's not ideal for professional settings because it doesn't tune accurately and quickly enough for a live setting, particularly when you're giving a performance. The one thing that was a little weird though, I have to show you. I can't really just say it. Take a guitar cable, plug the guitar into your acoustic. You're going into a DI or a mixer and you're coming through a PA and this is what it's gonna sound like. Okay, now it's time to stop the song and tune up, right? Or tune down. You do that by pressing the mic/tuner button. You press it down once, and now I'm in tuning mode, right? No sound is leaving the electronics of this guitar. Nothing is coming out the wire into the DI, which is great. That's what you want when you tune, right? Stick with me. I'm getting to a point. So you tune, right? E, A, blah, 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 blah. You're done tuning, right? In order to activate the guitar again, when it's plugged in, you don't turn off the tuner by pressing the tuner button again, right? That's what I'm doing right now. I'm holding. Still no sound coming out of the DI. No, you don't turn off the tuner by pressing the tuner button. Apparently, when it's plugged in, you turn on the tuner by pressing the tuner button. But to turn off the tuner and get the guitar to function again, you have to press the off button, which is basically the on button, right? The power button. So you press that, and now you're in regular guitar mode with the electronic signal going out the cable. Why is this? I don't know. It's not really, it wasn't fun figuring that out on stage. Granted, it didn't take long, it didn't even take a minute, but it was just a weird thing to have to do and deal with. But there you go. The fine thing about that is it doesn't pop the speaker, right? Like when you take a guitar cable out of your guitar while it's plugged into a PA, it doesn't happen here. So it really does just turn off the tuner. It's counterintuitive. I don't know if it's a tech thing or whatnot. Does it make or break this guitar? No, it's just a really weird thing. It's like for a guitar of this caliber that's so great and so fantastic and so practical and sounds incredible and the effects sound pretty great too, why would you do the tuner that way? But as weird as it is, it doesn't change my enjoyment of this guitar. And of course, I needed to get this guitar set up to my liking, the way I like my guitar set up when I got it. And shout out to the kind folks at Twin Town Guitars over in Minneapolis. They did a wonderful job. As you can see, the strap button that's on the side over here is still there because I don't really go too high up on the fretboard fretboard here because it doesn't have a cutaway. So it's perfect. Well, folks, there you have it. My comparison of the X4 Pro and the X4 Mini. Both great guitars. Both have their own specific use cases, I think. If I had to choose one, I would probably choose the X4 Pro simply because it has the tone knob and the cutaway and just more features. But for travel, you really can't beat this. I mean, for the longest time, whenever I had an acoustic show that I needed to go on the road with for an extended period of time, the GS Mini was the way to go for me. And now that I have these carbon fiber guitars, man, I am never looking back. They are fantastic. Thank you to Enya for making these. Guys, whichever one you pick, you're not gonna go wrong. That's really the ultimate sort of message of this video. They're both fantastic. The effects are great. Again, I linked the videos down below for you guys to check them out in terms of like the sound effects. They are fantastic. They are, I think, more approachable and easier to sort of wrap your mind around than the Next G, because the Next G is a smart audio guitar and it's kind of like the Axe effects of acoustic guitar in a way, and like it has a Kemper feature with the profiling. But these are just more straightforward acoustic guitars that are made out of carbon fiber with some onboard effects that are pretty much hardwired. So there's not much customization with regards to the effects, but they're kind of fine as they are. Moving forward, what would I like to see from future updates or second versions of these guitars? I'd like to see better indicators on the guitar's knobs that can show you where you are in terms of your volume level, your delay level. The second thing would be I'd love the tone knob to come back. The tone knob is very, very important in terms of adding a bump to your guitar. Another thing I'd suggest is if Enya does include a tuner in any future models, either don't or make it like the Next G tuner, because the onboard tuner on the Next G2 is so much more intuitive and cooler and better. And of course, bigger side markers would be cool. And also, if possible, and this I would leave to the Enya engineers to figure out, but if they could somehow figure out how we could control the wetness and the feedback of delay settings, or maybe even like an effects blend knob where we can turn on the delay and choose the time, but also have a blend to choose how much of that effect we want in. Actually, that would be perfect for like right here. Instead of the tuner being right there, we could just put the blend knob in there and choose how much of the effect we want to blend in. Enya, run with it. You guys make fantastic guitars. Let's see those updates. I consider myself very lucky to have these guitars. They're both fantastic road beasts and surprisingly crisp sounding for recording. I would suggest you would check out the X4 or the X4 Mini if you get a chance. You will not regret it, I promise you. Especially for the price, you get a lot of bang for your buck. Anyway, I have been the Rave in carbon fiber acoustic heaven. I wish you a wonderful day, evening, night, wherever you are. Enjoy, keep playing. Take care of yourselves and each other. Bye.